If you wanted to judge a movie series before watching it, you had two options: check the rating on IMDb, or literally ask your class video dealer to transfer the video. The first option is not reliable. The ratings tend to be 90% before the theatrical release. Later, the ratings tend to climb or fall due to audience reviews. Movie junkies tend to go for the second option. They tend to obtain the pirated version of the movie from the dealer and watch it. Then they decide whether it's worth their pocket money. Now, this point is controversial and it is a topic of another seminar. But have you wondered, how does a class dealer procure his wares? From where? Initial guess would be that he got the movie from one person and that person got it from another person. But let us assume the movie XYZ is an international release. Conventional logic says that a movie couldn't travel through individual shared transfers. It would take a lot of time. So the answer is that the content was distributed over a peer-to-peer network. This is a censorship-free world visited by anonymous users. There is no centralized search engine or storage. Files are transmitted using torrent files or more recently magnet links. There are centralized trackers which keep track of the number of peers and files. In a peer-to-peer network, there are individual computers called as peers. They are equal participants in the network, which means that they share a portion of their computing resources, such as processing power, disk storage, or network bandwidth. Here, the peers are both suppliers and consumers in the network. Any content on the network that has been uploaded by another peer. This content is actually swarmed, or chunks of it are sent to different peers. This is in contrast to the client server model where the consumer and the supply of resources is divided. The content is placed only in the server and the server cannot upload any requests back into the network other than a GET request. If we look at from a social side, the client and server network is designed in a way that it serves the interests of the entity owning the server of the network. The peer-to-peer network is designed in a way to serve the interest of the peers. This brings unique resources and capabilities. But this day was not developed in a day or two. The internet as we know it has evolved many times. It initially began as a military project called as the ARPANET and later was opened up to the public. And commercial companies such as Facebook and Instagram saw the opportunities in it. Then we civilians jumped aboard and started bombing the internet with our selfies and whatnot. Initially, we had the file transfer protocol. One computer would call the other computer over the 56 kilobit dial-up line. You could only connect to computers which had given you their addresses. Later came the Usenet forums. These still are in active usage, making it the oldest networks operating to date. The content for that client was downloaded from many servers which had the collection of articles. It was the first version of Reddit and decentralized P2P networks. But these were frustrating times to be an internet user. It was slow and unreliable. P2P networks were also out of the mainstream society. They were confined due to the cumbersome setup of a client and a non-friendly user interface. Then came the eras of the 2000s. It was the dawn of the internet and majority of the population had internet access. In comes Napster. Napster to you and me is a predecessor of Spotify. You could specifically send and download MP3 tracks across the peer in the Napster network. It had a friendly UI that appealed to the 18 to 24 group. The software was so popular that the high-speed networks in the college dormitories became overloaded, with as much of 61% of the external network traffic consisting of MP3 file transfers. Many colleges blocked its use for this reason, even before the concerns about liabilities for facilitating copyright violations on campus. The software did have one problem: it maintained a centralized tracker. As it grew into a company, it ran into legal difficulties as the network was being used to distribute songs, recordings, even before they went into the market. This caused the shutdown of the network as authorities would pull the plug on the server. Finally, the company was liquidated. So the community learned an important lesson. If they wanted to maintain the network, they had to be as decentralized as possible. So many projects started off at the demise of Napster. Some projects are like Nala, Freenet, Bearshare. Their main aim was to be decentralized as possible. Then some users began noticing some of the uploads in the networks were infected with malware. So again, the community came up with another solution. The files were split into chunks and the hashes of the chunks were recorded initially. When a user began downloading the file, the client software compares the hashes of the chunks to the hashes of the recorded hashes. If it fails a check, the chunk is dropped and sourced from another peer. This innovation also verified the file integrity at microscopic levels. Additionally, these clients also integrated antivirus solutions into them. If we observe a torrent website nowadays, it has a like to dislike button. There are pseudonyms attached to the torrent uploaders, and they tend to keep the pseudonym. Most of the torrent uploaders have a reputation to maintain. They are even provided with a verified tag once they cross a particular milestone. What happens here is that as uploaders try to maintain their reputation, they are more attentive to the consumer's needs. The upload quality tends to go up, the cost to download goes down, as visible with various compression algorithms used on games. This is what exactly economics would predict would happen. Brilliant. Even though these sites are littered with ads, there are many more projects which do not have ads. At some technical details. Let us try downloading Kali Linux's official torrent. I have already downloaded it. We can view it from the downloads folder. Now if we try opening this with an IDE, it is a bunch of meaningless characters and strings. Let's scroll through it to find some useful information. Forensic analysis. Now at the beginning of the file, we find a couple of track addresses. Let us record that information. These are the servers the computer would initially contact. At the end of the file is another string which is called as a URL list. Let us also record that particular information. Cool, but this particular information is not in the human readable format. So let us now open it up in a client. As I open up it in a client, you can see that I have paused the download of the particular file. Initially, it creates a container to store the file at a fixed location. In my case, it stored it in the downloads folder. It will be prefixed with the file extension .torrent. When we observe the trackers list, it is similar to the information which we recorded earlier. On starting download, it calls the tracker at UDP addresses. It returns a list of peers which the file or parts of it. This list is called as the distributed hash table. In the peers section of the client, we can see the different peers downloading and uploading chunks of the file. Now, if we switch to the logs section, we can see the DHT tracker has returned about 2,873 peers. These many people have complete downloaded version or partially downloaded versions of the torrent I am trying to download. But there is a point to note. The tracker only had to return a list of peers which had the list. It didn't have to handle the transfer part of the file. It was relegated to the peers. This technology reduces the overhead on the server and makes it scalable to unimaginable scales. Now let us look how the network is formed. Peer-to-peer network is an overlay network. There are networks which are built atop of other networks such as the internet. In P2P systems, virtual links between the peers are made, allowing for an abstraction of the underlying network and the construction of distributed systems. The peers can talk to each other, but there needs to be a set of rules before these peers talk to each other. These sets of rules are called as protocols, and to communicate on the internet, there is something called the Internet Protocol. Generally, all computers communicate using the TCP, or known as the Transmission Control Protocol. Transmission Control Protocol defines how to connect to a particular computer on the network and how to maintain the connection. Internet Protocol defines how the connected computer sends the data packets to one another. This includes basic human browsing activity and transfers data in environments where data corruption cannot be tolerated. Then comes the User Datagram Protocol. This webinar is actually powered by User Datagram Protocol. It is used in environments where data corruption can be tolerated. Few frames dropped here and there does not impact the viewing experience. UDP can be compared to a walkie-talkie. In radio communications, it does not matter how the message is sent. It is broadcasted into the radio frequency it has been selected into. There is no error correction, no ordering, no congestion control. So the congestion control is actually implemented on the application side. We do see this congestion control in real life. One example would be policemen or military enforcement officers saying copy and over. These are words used to indicate that the message has been received. This is congestion control on the application side. The Internet Protocol suite. It consists of 4 layers: the link layer, the internet layer, transport layer, and the application layer. Link layer. At the base level, we have the link layer. This layer is used for communication between devices in an air-gapped environment. Your Wi-Fi is actually a very good example of this. Above that, we have the internet layer. If you want to connect to the billions of devices across the internet, this is the layer you would use. It consists of the IPv4 protocols and the IPv6 protocols, which was recently released. But if you want to transmit data between computers on the internet, but in raw bytes, then you would use the transport layer and consist of the TCP and UDP protocols. But in case of P2P networks, you are ferrying data between application instances on separate computer systems. This means that we have to climb higher in the Internet Protocol suite. This particular layer is called as the application layer. Many protocols reside here, such as the domain name service. This guy comes up whenever you don't pay your internet service provider on time. Or like the HTTP protocol or the HTTPS protocol. Now P2P uses TCP IP of the Internet Protocol stack. Peers initially connect using the transport layer in the internet. Then when a set of conditions are met, the later communication takes place using the various protocols which are used in application layer. Mind you, the Internet Protocol predates the OSI model of networks. There are many protocols which run in the application layer: BitTorrent, eDonkey, FastTrack, Bitcoin, libp2p. Two separate different protocols cannot talk to each other. That means they are not interoperable. The most interesting of the bunch is the Bitcoin protocol. Many of you might not even know about this, but the mining process of the blockchain is conducted on individual computer units across the globe. There is no centralized authority, yet trust is maintained using two other fields of computer science. One is blockchain. This is a publicly distributed ledger, and cryptography. This is used to verify the transactions between the nodes. Now we have established connections using our preferred protocols. If you want to see an actual breakdown of the communication, you could use something like Wireshark. It allows you to see beyond the surface and tear through the abstraction. Maybe you could come up with your own protocol. Based on these protocols, various network topologies can be implemented. Now peers are connected via logical links, and the links between two peers may take several hops in physical network. These links between the peers construct the path between the payload direction in the P2P network called as P2P network topology. There are many topologies, but they can be narrowed down into two ways based on their network models: unstructured networks and structured networks. In unstructured networks, the data storage and the data location type are irrelevant. Nodes connect to their nearest neighbors and maintain a list. This behavior is replicated across all the nodes. But the greatest disadvantage is searching contents on this network. If a node requests something, then the node sends out a search request to the node in its list. If it is not found, the request is replicated again and again, sent out. This involves a lot of CPU and memory usage. Due to these inefficiencies, the structured model was proposed. Structured networks. In structured networks, the data storage is related to the key values of the data. So there is a centralized tracker. This has a table called the distributed hash table. Each of the hash values in the table can be decoded to obtain which peer might have the resource. Pretty neat these networks were, but bear in mind, Napster used this approach and the entire network was paralyzed when the central net tracker disappeared. So the community innovated to form the rise of hybrid networks. But let us look what happened in the real world. Based on organic growth of networks, we can classify them into four different ways: the centralized topology, decentralized unstructured topology, decentralized structured topology, and partially decentralized topology. Centralized topology, it is a structure easy to maintain. Its ability to find on the network is very easy. This is because the net resource discovery relies on something called the neuter directory systems. The discovery algorithm is pretty flexible and efficient and can be used to realize efficient queries. Can be used to realize complex queries. The biggest problems is the similarity to client and server structures. This is the structure model that first generation of P2P networks used. Applications are still having the central server and does not remove completely the properties of the server. Also, it is called as the non-pure P2P networks. However, in conclusion, this peer network model is not perfect. It has the following problems. Paralysis of the central index server can easily lead to the collapse of the entire network, so the reliability and the speed and the safety of the entire network is put into question. With the expansion of the network, the maintenance and the updating cost of the central index server will increase dramatically and the cost is higher. The existence of a central index server often caused disputes and copyright issues. The service providers can be easily sued. Decentralized unstructured topology. The famous Nutella is based on this particular structure. It has completely abolished the idea of a server. Each node actually maintains a neighbor's list and records its associated IP address and other information. Then they exchange these particular lists with each other to maintain two things: the topology and to replace the lapsed connections. Periodically, they send ping messages to the connected nodes, and the nodes which receive these ping messages send back upon message to acknowledge the receiving. To join the network, the node needs to know at least one connected node. A good analogy for this is the ping pong game. Here, the players can be defined as a node and the ball can be defined as the message. When the player serves the ball, it is a ping. The net can be considered to be a rudimentary firewall. If the ball passes through and the other player responds, that is a pong message. The search algorithm is based on controlled flooding. First step is that to send a query to its neighbors or the nodes in its list. If it is not found in its neighbors list, it is forwarded. The query is not allowed to exist more than a particular time. Otherwise, the query will keep on calling itself infinitely. This particular problem is tackled by using a time to leave field, and it is auto decremented every time it is forwarded down. Decentralized structured topology. It uses a distributed hash table to organize nodes. The tables jointly safeguard the table is jointly safeguarded by the nodes of the network. All the nodes have a copy. Tables are divided into blocks and assigned to the nodes. Using a cryptographic generator, unique values are assigned to objects inside these particular blocks. The particular advantages of this is it can tolerate high churn rates, can be scaled without effort, and uniformity is maintained across nodes. And it sounds similar to Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, the distributed hash table or the blockchain is actually copied all over the globe by all the nodes in the network. So whenever a particular transaction is conducted, a block is that represents the transaction is initially created. Then the block is sent to every node in the network. The nodes validate the transaction and the nodes receive a reward for the proof of work. The block is added to the existing blockchain and the transaction is complete. Partially decentralized topology. It is a mixtape, imbibes the features of the centralized topology and the decentralized unstructured topology. It divides nodes into two based on their computing resources. High performance computers such as supernodes and normal nodes are like our computers. Supernodes store information about other nodes. Casa is a very good example of this. It combines the advantages of the centralized P2P's efficient search structure and the pure P2P's decentralized structure. It first establishes a TCP connection with a supernode, then sends the file metadata it has to the supernode. Supernode and its respective number of ordinary nodes form a self-contained cluster. These clusters form a pure P2P network. The best performing supernode is selected as the index server. The search algorithm is pretty simple. Initially, the node searches within its local cluster. If it is not found, then the requested is forwarded to the nearest cluster. It continues this until it finds it, and it does not strain the whole network as a whole. A good example would be the universe. Solar system is part of the Milky Way. The Milky Way is part of a cluster of galaxies called as a local group, and there are many such groups. There are still critical gaps in all of these models. A totally decentralized model does not still exist. Many of them still use TCP, which is prioritized reliability, not speed, and the search algorithms in the nodes are pretty inefficient till now. So there are many applications for these. If you have a particular scientific theory to be tested but the machine at home burns out, use Vishwa. Vishwa is a reconfigurable P2P middleware for grid computations. It actually takes a scientific model, divides up the processing task, and sends it to computers which have Vishwa pre-configured on it. Then there is a P2P algorithm for energy saving usage for a parallelly connected pump system. Tired of promises made by your mobile networks? Well, you can do something now. Mobile P2P services using the session initial protocol. Don't want to pay the transaction fees on your credit card? Try Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system proposed as a paper by Satoshi Nakamoto, an individual who has not yet been identified. Tired of online cheaters in games? Well, this paper comes to your rescue. Cheating detection through game time modeling, a better way to avoid time cheats in P2P mocks. Hate Skype's video quality? Build your own real-time video chat application using WebRTC. Anonymous real-time chat and video calls. This can be implemented using the WebRTC implementation. So, what I want to point your attention towards is that innovation not only happens in world-class universities, research centers, but also happens in the corners of the internet. They operate in the most inhospitable conditions possible, facing constant risk of shutdowns from the authorities. To operate in this environment is a staggering achievement. Things that happen in the corners of the internet are often harbingers of change. What I'm trying to say that is the internet is going to evolve one more time. And it might move from the centralized version of the internet controlled by billion-dollar companies to the decentralized internet, which may be powered by people like you and me. Thank you.